questions?
Yeah. Card.
Oh,
we've.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Why don't you take a couple verbal?
Well, we'll.
Can I ask you that? Because we don't have an awful lot of time. I understand, and we'll take you after I take these 5. I will take your question after I take the people who are ahead of you.
Come on, Bill.
Thank you very much. Sir,
Problem we have right now?
I learned in kindergarten to take turns. I learned in kindergarten to take turns, and this is a first come first served. So I'm going to take.
Come on, Bill.
I'm going to take the other people's questions.
Come on, Bill.
Someone did raise the issue of why we didn't invite the other political party. I personally invited Genevieve, but she couldn't make it. This is kind of a house thing. We didn't ask. We didn't talk to the Senate. It's too weird to explain the House and Senate. The bill that Speaker Donovan talked about that passed unanimously in the House a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, went up to the Senate. It was only passed on party line votes. I don't try and explain the state Senate or anything else to you. She would have been here. The Public Health Committee, I believe she's the ranking member, is still in session. They have been all day today. And then let me just tell you personally, Jan's just a great person to work with. The Danbury delegation, regardless of political party, we're friends. We get along with each other extremely well. She was with us this morning. Those of you who were up at the Capitol this morning, she put that all together with her and her staff, and I do want to acknowledge her that. The problem we all have is that we are human and can only be in one place at a time, even though I had to be like in 4 this morning. Someone asked about the why would that there's a budget proposal that includes closing a state into the university, and why would it be Western? Let's correct that. As Speaker Donovan alluded, there was an attempt made a few weeks ago to try and get a handle on just how much an $8.7 billion deficit was and what it would take to do that with just cuts. And just example after example after example, they were actually rejected in writing by the Speaker and the President of the Senate. And it just said, here's how much one of the 4 state universities cost and what it would look like. It was like a $98 million savings if you're just going to do cuts. And obviously the gossip mill got a hold of that and became the closing down of Western. That's not true.
We're working to we're fighting to avoid that. That's
Yes.
The whole idea is to avoid closing down any higher education institution. I would think it would be an absolute disgrace if we closed down any higher education.
Well, as I said this morning, for any of you who might be English majors and have read Pearl Buck, particularly, you don't eat the seed corn, and if there's any equivalent of the seed corn for state government, it's education and higher education. You don't ransom the future for something going on today. So we're all very protective of the university, and obviously those of us who here from Western Connecticut particularly love Western Connecticut State, just so you understand.
And actually, and I would say, there would be some pushback, at least from myself, on the bonding side, because I believe that the new arts building is important, and that construction is an economic generator, and that we should not be spending all of the bonding and construction at the university. So I'm hoping to impress upon leadership actually that we go forward on some of those projects. So throw that out there.
Thanks, Jim. I've actually got 3 very similar questions. given the state of our economy, our needs for public services, shouldn't we consider raising taxes in a fair way? The budget cannot be balanced by spending cuts alone. Don't we need a combination of spending cuts, revenue increases, and elimination of tax expenditures we can no longer afford? Instead of raising fees, licenses, etc., why doesn't the legislature work for an increase in state income tax? Would this be the fairest way to raise the revenue needed to keep socially necessary programs in a time of trouble? Is this feasible given the facts? Democrats have majority in both houses. So I've got, and so so far you've talked about reduction. What are you doing to increase revenues? Example, the sales tax, tobacco tax, and other type of revenues. And then many of these have additional parts. But let's
I was one of those people.
Okay.
So can I just elaborate slightly, because in fact I didn't want to write everything out on my part. But I just think that given where we are in the economy and what President Obama is doing about taxes, I think is really fair. And I wondered, given that we all elected him, so obviously we knew what his plan was about raising taxes on people who can more afford it, and why we aren't looking at something similar. I know I fall into the category of people that can more afford it. So I'm talking about myself and my family paying a little bit more so that we really protect the services that people who have less and who are less fortunate than I am. So I really hope that we would consider that approach here.
Let me just talk about taxes in general, because we do it. I mean, we have a tax committee. It's called the Finance Committee. We don't call it, again, we don't call it tax committee. The Finance Committee, that sounds great, doesn't it? High finances. But, and they look at taxes every year. I mean, that's their job, is to kind of try to figure it out every year. Again, when things are going well, no one's complaining, they have an easy job. But when times are tough, then it's tough. All right, so here's a couple things. One is, there's these things called, there's tax breaks that certain groups have that they don't pay taxes on. And the one that keeps coming up is yarn. Anybody here are knitters? There is no tax on yarn. Why? Somebody passed a bill one time for yarn. People along the coast passed a bill that there's no taxes on fixing boats and yachts because they were competing with with Rhode Island boats and yachts, and that made sense at the time. And the one thing I think everybody here knows, who shops online, is you're supposed to pay sales tax on the purchases you buy on the internet. Now, I don't know how many, I'm not going to show of hands here, but I think some people may not do that. And here's the problem with that. We have a sales tax, and it's that new system called the internet is hurting. Well, I would say hurting if you don't like to pay tax or whatever. But in terms of the state coming dollars in, that's less money we get in for sales tax. And it's hurting the businesses. The people in Connecticut that are retailers in Connecticut, they complain to us that people come to their stores, they look at the products, they measure the products, they test the products out, then they leave and buy them on the internet. They buy them on the internet. So that's hurting our economy, because people are buying it from elsewhere, and it's also hurting the state. So that's a systematic problem that we have, a structural problem that we need to adjust. Or else, the retailers will just become showrooms for people on the internet. And when the gas crisis was real high, I know some people like me, instead of driving to a store and buying a book for $6, I got it from Amazon and dropped it off at my house. So I saved money even on the price of gas. The guy came and dropped it off. So that's another issue. So we're looking at that, and the income tax is a big issue. Our income tax went down, and the people with the highest income in the state of Connecticut, they pay the same amount that a lot of us pay for a percentage of income tax. Now, a lot of other states have higher ones. We're looking at that, and the whole idea is when we look at taxes is what's fair. And we determine it by votes what's fair. The governor may have a different opinion on what's fair for us. And that's part of the fight. So we had passed a bill a couple of years ago to raise the income tax for people who make over $250,000, and we lowered the income tax for people who make less than a certain amount, and we actually gave people a property tax credit of $1,000. That's what we did. The governor vetoed that. She didn't like that. So we have a difference of opinion on taxes, but we have to fill this hole. Taxes is going to come out. We're going to look at that. We're going to try to figure out. We have to negotiate with the governor and figure out what she wants. She wanted, we had a tax on, for lack of better terminology, dead rich people. It's called the estate tax, and we tax them at a certain rate, which is, again, is not a high rate, but people can bring and we weren't able to tax that more. But we might have to tax. Those are options, and certainly when we talk to people, nobody wants to say, hey, you know what? Their answer is we're going to raise the taxes on people who are in pain and trying to make ends meet. That's not what we're trying to do. I think we're going to raise taxes on people, on certain people, and maybe people who are not in such pain, and maybe, they could probably figure out a way to give up a little bit here. And just there was an article, I'll do one last tax for me, there was an article in the CEO of Netflix. Everybody knows Netflix? People who are members of Netflix, that means you have DVDs sitting on a counter that you haven't watched and you're paying for it. But Netflix, they make a lot of money that way. They make a lot of money. And the CEO for that says, "When people quit complaining about how much I make a lot of money. I came up with this wonderful idea, and because you're not watching this movie, I'm making lots of money on that, and you're paying for me. I'm making a lot of money. Don't blame me for that." He says, "But you know what? I do make a lot of money. Tax me." He says, if you tax me, I know my money's going for health care for the senior citizens, education for your kids. So he says, don't blame me. And I think with Jim Calhoun, if you say to Jim Calhoun, hey buddy, how much do you make? Give me money. If anybody knows Jim Calhoun, he'll punch you in the nose for that, right? If you say, hey Jim, we're raising money for autism, he pulls out his checkbook and gives us money. Hey Jim, we're working on supportive housing. Jim Calhoun takes out his checkbook and gives money for it. It's kind of how you do it. And I think if you say to people, these are important things, you need to fund. People
Sure, go, Joe.
If I could just add to that, we were talking about looking at the way that we tax people. We need to look at everything. An example that I thought of that wasn't mentioned earlier, our gas taxes in the state of Michigan. The way we tax gasoline, no one ever wants to talk about taxing gasoline. Well, one of the other areas where we've lost a lot of revenue recently is with our gross receipts tax. We have a gas tax that is tied to the price of gasoline. Well, what happened recently? Gas prices fell, and guess what? So did our revenues from gas taxes. Does that make a lot of sense? It was nice. We all appreciate and like to go to the pump now and say, "Wow, this is great." Our low prices on gasoline are great, but it's not helping us in these economic times. So it makes you think: is the way that this tax is structured, does it really make sense? Should there be a more stable way to tax gasoline? We need to look at all these things. That's just one more example. Joe tax. That was just one more area where we're losing revenue, and where I think we could look at that tax and probably have a better method.
You're young. I'm old enough to remember when a gallon of gasoline cost 19.9 cents. Those were good days. Of course, when I was only 2 and couldn't drive, it didn't matter. But I remember the signs. We did get another similarly situated questions regarding share payment. How about people at the top of the income pyramid, many of whom live in this county and have profited greatly from the dubious financial practices, help share the burden in higher taxes? I think that kind of goes to what Speaker Donovan talked about. It's interesting.
how about a show of hands? How many people would like, at some point, if we need to, raise the income tax on the upper income?
That's over $250,000 in income.
50%.
You're the we and haven't done anything yet. It's ironic when you're on this side of the table. You have to learn to appreciate irony very much. And yesterday I get in the mail a publication that comes out of the State Department of Labor, the Department of Economic and Community Development. And it's a compilation of all the economic indicators and statistic, labor figures, and they always have an article at the beginning to kind of explain it all. And the headline was, "Recession began in March of 2008. And I'm going, oh, there's news that's really helpful to me. This started a year ago. But what are you doing for me today? And I'm actually looking at some of the numbers. I'm kind of a wonk when it comes to these kinds of things. And on the income tax, on the income in the state, income continues to rise, actually. Very, very tiny bits, like 1% over last year. But then I look at the next line, and it shows income that's subject to unemployment insurance, which is people who earn money by the hour, they're wage workers, and that's gone down. So income in general is going up, but working people are making less. What does that tell me? There's a lot of rich people who continue to get richer, and there's a lot of middle-class people who are getting poorer. And so as we look at those kind of real numbers, we're going to have to make decisions about where to go for revenue. And it's equally interesting. We have actually polled rich people, and they don't mind. They really don't mind literally sharing the wealth, because there's a certain noblesse oblige, if you will, to being a participant, to helping out, and not just in writing a check to a charity or a charitable organization, but being a part of the society that has made it possible for them to make a lot of money and participate in a very capitalistic system. So these are all going to be interesting pieces as we go forward, and thank you very much for bringing up all of the issues regarding that. A few corollaries from that. One of, why not allow the city of Danbury to have a sales tax? Somebody want to?
That came up, I think, a year ago or so, and I'm opposed to that. I don't think that we can have different regions of the state with their own kind of tax structure. Because what you would have is, say you had an automobile dealership in Danbury, and Danbury had a higher sales tax than in Milford, then you're driving everybody to Milford to avoid that, and so on and so forth. So I think that whatever kinds of tax policy we have should really be consistent across the state of Connecticut. So that's basically my position. I just think it's bad economics. I do think that what we could do for, let's say, a city like Danbury, is we could do the hotel tax. That's something that was talked about, and allowing a piece of that to come back to the municipality to help, because that would be something that would be probably more the cities and more the distressed areas. So that would be something that I would support, and maybe some other enabling types of legislation to help cities. But to start, go to New Haven and there's one tax there, and you go to Hartford, you go to Danbury, and it's up and down, and I just don't think that that's going to be beneficial for our businesses, our small businesses in particular, and I just think it has a lot more impact than you might think.
I won't read the whole page to you, and I apologize to whoever thoughtfully put this together. This person has a proposal to have unions agree to open contract negotiations specific to wages and benefits in order to increase the current $3 to $6 prescription copay for union employees to what most Americans currently pay, which is $20 to $25. Increase doctor visit copays from $15 to $25 to $30, and allow a 2-year wage freeze until the country gets through this mess. And
Kind of directed to me a little bit, because I used to be a union worker, so I know about these things. And one of the good things about union workers, I want people to have good health care and decent wages. So now that I'm not a union worker, I still want people to have good wages and good health care. So the whole idea here is, the good thing about the question is, why did I move that? Okay. Right now, the current prescription price that I have is $3 for a generic and $6 for a brand name, which is actually great, right? So when I go to businesses, I say, hey, how would you like to do that? When I open up my healthcare plan, they like that too. They like that too. they would like to have that. Because this business guy I talked to, he's paying $25,000 a year for his family plan, and his co-pays are $40. Now, we can make everybody pay $40 and everybody be miserable, but I'd rather everybody pay $3 to $6 to feel better. So, I mean, that's my choice. We could do that. Now, the beautiful thing is the state employees are able to negotiate a lower price, and so that's where they get the benefit, a lower price. Again, if we negotiate with everybody, everybody can share a lower price. But these are meeting with the governor's office right now, and they have had meetings, and my information is that hopefully they're going well, but they're, as with anything, what the unions want is they want to keep their jobs. And if they're going to give up money and other things, they want to make sure they keep their jobs. If they give up money and lose their jobs, that's not a good thing for anyone, right? And so we certainly don't want layoffs. If we hear there's a business being closed down the street, we don't want that to happen. When we hear insurance companies are laying people off, we don't want that to happen either. So we want to make sure there are jobs that are out there. When the governor actually announced that she's cutting stationery for the state of Connecticut, you know, it sounds like a good thing, but then you think about it. There's probably like a stationery salesperson in East Hartford going like, that's my business, right? I mean, he's losing business. I'm not kidding around. When we do that, there's an effect to it. So if we lay off so many employees, they're out of work, that hurts the economy, no one's spending money, et cetera, et cetera. So the fact that the unions are negotiating with the government, that's a good thing. And if the past is any indication of the future, they've done it in the past. In 91, 92, they gave back all kinds of stuff and helped the state out. In 2001, 2003, they did it again. So in some ways, we don't ask, we're reticent to ask people to raise their taxes, but we're not reticent to ask state employees to give back things that they've earned. So, you know, you have to take that into consideration. So when state employees give back, they also get taxed, and so they're getting kind of a double hit, but we should say thanks. But they do that, and negotiations hopefully will go well, and there will be some savings, and hopefully we'll get House security, and we can move on from there. So, it's the same thing?
No. Can't look at that why.
Why is no one talking about teacher unions? They're bleeding us dry through property taxes. Every teacher should split themselves a 4.5% raise, pay low health care costs, have too much fat in their budget. Increase CCS. Be pressed to communities that don't put all school staff on wage freeze. Well, again, the towns can meet with their unions and have discussions about that and talk about it, and they've done that in the past. As with any employer, they meet with their employees, try to figure it out. I think that's a fair way to do that. But that's someone's idea, and certainly take that into consideration.
I think that, you know, the state is not going to start dictating to local municipalities on how to negotiate with their unions, and that's not really, in my opinion, practical. I wouldn't use state power, state statutes to begin dictating and that micromanaging on that level, that everybody across the state of Connecticut should have to take a wage freeze. You know, if that works for Danbury, or if it works for Bethel, if it works for Reading, what works for Reading doesn't necessarily work for Danbury, and vice versa. So I don't think that as state legislators we want to get into the business of micromanaging, you know, each individual town, 169 towns. What we do want to do is we want to try to incentivize, I think, working together in terms of a regional approach, in terms of purchasing, sharing resources on the regional level, and I think that there is movement afoot within the legislature to really look at smart growth going forward and trying to get, you know, different communities to work together to accomplish some of the savings on that.
So hopefully we'll find out what the state. There's another one about state employees. Again, they're talking about concessions, etc. And on our House Democrat staff, we did voluntary non-paid days, and a number of people took that as well. People are working
This
that
is
day.
the third recession I've been through as a state legislator, and it certainly is the worst. But I have always found that public employees, both on the state and local levels, are the first to want to help out. They're dedicated people. They do believe in the jobs that they perform. They believe their jobs are important. They believe they're providing services to people in need, and they're very proud of their ability to help out. And they have never not come forward in very bad economic times and helped out.
This one is about Mr. Bartlett. Thank you for asking Commissioner Galvin of the Public Health Department about the status of getting Lyme disease tracked electronically. The question is, if federal stimulus money is available to improve healthcare records, would that money automatically go to the Connecticut Department of Public Health to implement a program? I question if this would be the best place considering the problems the department's having with electronic tracking Lyme disease and giving payments for community health programs. Does the state have a centralized IT, Information Technology Department, or does each department have its own IT unit? Yes. Francis, is you? Francis Wright? In the back? Okay. Anybody want to take a crack at that?
Sure.
Mr. Bartlett, this is addressed to you.
Basically, there is $1.5 million that the Department of Public Health has right now to actually bring laboratories online. And it's been sitting there for, I guess, a couple of years. And I'm not really sure, I haven't really gotten the answer exactly why that is. But I am on the case, and that is a priority of mine, as you witnessed watching that hearing. In terms of the federal stimulus money, I believe that there is money available actually for electronic medical records, and not specifically to this particular issue in terms of Lyme disease, but all across the board. That whole area is seen as a saver in terms of healthcare costs. And we've had discussions for 2 or 3 years now in terms of the state of Connecticut trying to get our technology and kind of identify how that's going to happen. I feel pretty good that because the administration has made that a priority and said that really needs to happen. I believe that it's going to be a part of their healthcare reforms, and I think that Connecticut right now, I believe, is well positioned to take advantage of those.
How do we get some of that in Connecticut, like the Danbury Hospital?
Well, a lot of that stuff is going to be, I think Bob mentioned at the beginning, competitive bids, where we really need to, and most of the federal money we need to kind of recognize what they're calling czars, or particular people that are the point people that are the ones that can receive. And a lot of it is about actually just doing what the speaker said, which is applying for it and making sure that we have the infrastructure in our state so that we can actually receive it.
So your projections here only include the projections given for the state and local budgets from the stimulus, not the bids.
That's correct. That's right. So there's other monies that are
There's
sitting out
90
there.
days to
Don't-
those bids.
Don't count your chickens before they hatch.
The problem is
I
that
understand.
Yeah.
the problem is for us as legislators is that I cannot fill out an application. The speaker cannot fill out an application. This is something that the executive branch really has to be a driver on. They have to, because they have to fill out the applications. That's their function.
Executive branch of the state?
That's right. The governor and her commissioners. This is their responsibility, really. We can do all kinds of legislation. We can do enabling legislation if we have to in order to kind of force some things. But it really is, the speaker said, there's $50 million that we haven't been getting for cyber reimbursements. And that's just something that's just been ongoing for 3 years. So now we have all this extra pot of money. And it's really, it's something that you really need to communicate to, the governor and lobby on,
How about the companies within the state of Connecticut that could get reach out to that? They have to go through the governor also?
So for instance, there's an energy proposal now that has to get filed, I believe, by Monday, which would get us all kinds of federal dollars for energy, weatherization, etc. There's a new industry that's been doing that in the state of Connecticut. If the governor doesn't file, that's money lost. So hopefully we're monitoring and making sure that
It's more than connecting the dots anymore. One last question, because I know Chris has to go. Thanks for coming to Danbury. We'd like to encourage support of education, the foundation of our future. Could you support a low-cost, no-cost change to encourage parental involvement, a proven key to student success? We'd like the law to change to require 2 parent-teacher conferences each year to have schools report parent participation. What's on education? You and Chris? Chris, can you bring us up to date on this education? Chris Liddy from Newtown is on the education committee, so is Jason. Is there something pending?
No, I don't think so.
Not in that,
That's something
not
that
on
we-
what she's saying.
Yeah.
But it's worth, you can email both of us and we'll see, I'll review your idea and initiatives and see if I agree with it. We can always tack on, legislation. I think it is important, obviously, though, to get parents involved. I would say it sounds a little bit, I don't know if that's an unfunded mandate or not, but one of the things that in this budget discussion is unfunded mandates. One of the clarion calls out there from municipalities is no more unfunded mandates. So education is one of those areas, though, that I get my back up sometimes because there's just certain things that I feel that have to be done, need to be done, and the system is a little bit broke here and there. So I don't take no unfunded mandate pledge, but I am very sensitive and try to, make sure that we're, listening, especially in the next 2 years, that we're not passing on a cost to the town that we're not willing to pay for. And we all are, very cognizant of that right now. So, I don't know who submitted the question, but feel free to email right away, and we'll take a look at it.
I knew without even reading the name.
Oh.
That'd be possible. We're out of time because the speaker does have to get down to Washington. Let me just.
We got a gentleman.
Oh, so okay. Oh.
We can take a question.
Yeah.
Sure, we're out of
God bless you.
We're out of cards.
I understand you guys are between a rock and a hard spot.
Yeah.
That
Got
would
to
be
cut spending and or raise tax. My first question to you was, what do you think the federal government plays a significant role in the problems we're having today, be it in social engineering through Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, AIG is insuring all of the bad loans, so to speak, the subprime loans, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I think there was a lot of that. Yes, absolutely. I wouldn't say the social engineering part, but I think the Fannie Mac stuff, the Freddie and Fannie, they got caught up in the same scheme that the securitized groups were doing. They all went after it. I know when I got my mortgage, way back in the last recession, I had to show up with my pay stub, my wife's pay stub. Somebody called the place. They looked at all my assets. I had to buy mortgage insurance, and then they got the insurance, and the worth of my house went down as soon as that happened. I bought in '88. I was one of those idiots. All right, but and finally in '98 I got equity. They said, "Don't worry, you'll get equity tomorrow." And the same scheme they were doing then. This time they took that scheme and pumped it up, and they took. Freddie and Fannie they did it, but Wall Street was stamping these things AAA. These are good loans. They had these loans called ninjas, right? Everybody know what those are? No income, no job, no assets. No, there was nothing. People were coming in and they were saying, "Did you breathe? Sign this. Here's $500,000," and it was all based on the price of housing going up. So they didn't care if you paid it out, and they sold it. And people like us went to our financial advice and they go, "Hey, look at this. We're making money on this," not knowing it was a Ponzi scheme. They ripped us off. So yeah, it was absolutely shocking.
Good question to all these fellows here. Do you have any idea as to what the impact of illegal immigration and immigrants have on the budget, local budgets?
I don't know if you can quantify.
Is it a concern?
Well, anytime you spend any money, if it's certainly it's a concern in terms of criminal matters, if somebody's an illegal immigrant committing crimes and costing taxpayers, of course.
Do you think the ICE is a good program?
I don't know if I want to go there right now. So, I don't know if that's really a budget question.
Hey, we're all concerned about what's going on.
Chris has to leave. I think the rest of it.
You have a different agenda.
Let me just sum up saying thank you so much. This has been extremely helpful. taking notes. And I'm certain, did we get all the questions? I'm sorry I didn't get to the ones that I would like to get in line to beat up AIG. Don't get me started on that. I did want to close in sharing. Every year I do a constituent survey. I represent downtown Danbury. The average part of Western Connecticut is surrounded by all the richer parts of Western Connecticut. And I ask people every year, what's your principal concern for you and your family? And surprisingly, the number one issue is the increasing cost of gasoline, heating oil, and electricity. Still, the second one is health care and health insurance availability. So we're working on that. I ask them. Usually I list a whole bunch of state programs, safety net programs, other kind of programs, education, that kind of thing. And usually I ask, if you were voting in the budget, would you spend more or less or the same on this thing? I said, this year, we can't go there. Would you cut a lot, cut a little, or protect? Protect is winning in every category, except, I think, aid of business. But for children and disabled, and mentally ill, municipalities, buses and roads, it's protect. And so then I ask, if after you've made the necessary cuts in good conscience, and the budget is still not balanced, which of these revenue proposals would you choose? Big long list of them. Number one, increase the tax on tobacco. Number two, increase the tax on alcohol. And number three, increase the income tax on individuals who earn $250,000 or more. So a lot of the things we've talked about in this room tonight are the same things that my constituents are talking about and telling me. So I think we're all on the right track. We're on the right track for recovery, for keeping those jobs, for creating those jobs, for turning the United States around. Because in spite of all that has gone on in the last 6 months, I'm still optimistic that together, if we roll up our sleeves, we can solve this problem too. And I hope you all are. Thank you so much.